Hi, everyone. Really good to see you, and nice to see some faces that I obviously recognized from a while back, but also to meet those of you who I actually haven't met formally before. And it's good to see that pretty much straight up that the jokes straight out of Pete's mouth are exactly the same as they were when we did the APC all those months ago. So clearly a close-knit group, and I think that's always wonderful. One of the things that actually the reason I agreed to do this talk on this day is because I heard what David was speaking about after me. So I thought, well, that's brilliant. I'll come along. And so I'm here to listen to David as well. So hopefully I can add a little bit extra to your time here. But positive psychology is the thing that I'm passionate about. I actually got into positive psychology through the sports psychology field. And that's what I did my master's and my research in. And having played international sport, I was always fascinated about how powerful the mind is, and how I still remember early days working with a sports psychologist whose phrase to me was, get out of the way of yourself. And it was very much that kind of sparked my interest into this field. And since then moved into the positive psychology space in a big way. And most of my work now is actually done in the education field, working with school leaders, policymakers, to try and look at ways of introducing positive psychology coaching into the educational field at a leadership level, so that we can cascade it down and teach the skills of flourishing to the young people sort of in teachers' care. So I'm going to just share the screen, and hopefully you are able to all see it. Is on. So if you just let me know when that pops up. Is that all there, Pete?
Yeah,
are we able to?
That's
all right, great. So yeah, the idea is just to have a brief look at positive psychology and how that impacts the way that I coach. I really enjoyed going back. I did a coaching qualification 20 odd years ago, but going and doing the course again with Pete was really, really impactful for me, because what it did was get me back into asking more questions, and that Michael Bungay Stainer's try and sort of contain the advice monster. And but of course, at the same time, trying to look at ways that I could still bring the psychology piece to bear, but in a way where it was more coaching. So the positive coaching psychology is obviously really powerful for me. So let's have a brief look at it today, just talking about the background of positive psychology as a science to start off with, so that those of you who don't know about the field can just get an understanding in it. Then I think what's critical is for us to define what we see flourishing and wellness as, because for me, the work that I do is around this piece. How can we get people to flourish and be well? And then look at how the field of positive psychology coaching has grown over the last sort of dozen or so years. And then I want to just introduce two frameworks that I use, which give pathways to coaching. So the work that I do in the actual session, what does that look like? And a couple of examples, and then some Q&A at the end, hopefully. I'd said to Pete at the start, I think probably the most powerful part of it is the question and answer bit at the end. So please do start thinking of questions you want to ask. So I think the first thing is just to look back at the history of positive psychology. So it came about, 1998 was the first time that the term positive psychology was voiced. And that was Martin Seligman, when he became the president of the American Psychological Association. And what he did when he took over the chair of that organization was to say to folk that he felt there was a real issue around the role that psychologists took in society. And I'll show you a continuum just now of what I mean by that. So for him, positive psychology, and this is his definition, is the scientific study of optimal human functioning. It aims to discover and promote the factors that allow individuals and communities to thrive. And I think that's just a lovely definition to put what we do in a nutshell. I, in particular, having worked in schools, the damage that is done by perfectionism, this someone trying to be a perfectionist. So I do love that term optimal. How do we get people to be optimal in the moment rather than feel they have to be perfect? Because of course we know that sets them up for failure. So just to talk a little bit about this idea of what Seligman was talking about when he raised this idea with his fellow psychologists at the first conference in 1998. He said that psychology as a practice has always been to treat people. So there was always this treatment paradigm. And if you look at that continuum, the idea of, we only send people to see a psychologist if they're showing signs or symptoms, or even worse, there's some mental disability has started to manifest itself. And of course, as psychologists, we try and then move people back to this neutral point. And I think where coaching has often been, I think sometimes people say, oh, you need a coach if there's something wrong and you want to fix it. Whereas actually we know, working in the field, that actually coaching should be what positive psychology is taking people from neutral and allowing them to move into this growth side of their lives. So the wellness paradigm. And so when Seligman put this out, he said, as psychologists, what we should be doing is trying to educate, raising awareness and educate people so that they can flourish. And in that way, they hopefully will be less of a burden on the system. So hence the term positive psychology, getting folk to move more up this wellness paradigm, not in the treatment paradigm.